the English-speaking students, their needs, they have some specific needs which may not be similar to the Spanish-speaking students, and then so on and so forth. So that's just an observation which requires also to be investigated further. Now, the teaching and learning tools that they use the Grammaire Progressive, as I just mentioned, and then Panorama de Langue Française. Those are the references, the geography of the books they use. So there's neither laboratory or ICT room where students can do further research or learn on their own. So they vary. They just depend on the lesson in classes, what they learn from the teachers. So and then the other challenges that are the need for this, according to my observation or analysis, is that the need for an ICT room or like some sort of language laboratory could help these students to continue learning French. Why? Because in Morocco we know that French is not a language that is used outside classrooms, because outside there's Arabic. So the moment they go in contact with the Moroccan society, they are exposed to Arabic, and they also this makes it that the only time they're in contact with the French language is when they're in class. That's why there's need for more tools and learning tools for these students. And then when they go back to their campus, they stay in between them, amongst them, so they continue speaking their languages, English, Spanish, or local languages. So there's no that continuation, there's no continuation in the learning of the French language. So the research question that I formulated, that I'm working on is that is the duration of 6 months sufficient for a student to master the French language and be able to study French at the university? So that's why I started with the description of this center, because we had to know the context. Why is it that the 6 months? I'm questioning the 6 months. So we know that duration on its own is not that much of importance. But what is important is the program, because when we talk about these 360 hours of 6 months, we are growing them into 3 hours of a French lesson, 5 days per week, without further continuation outside the classroom. So is that enough? That's the question, the first question. The second question that I'm working with is that is the content adapted to the targeted students' needs? So the content here we're talking about is French grammar mainly, the parts of speech, verbs, nouns, adjectives, and so on and so forth. That's more for syntactic rules for simple sentence construction. So is that content adapted to their needs? Because these students are taught the French grammar rules, yet at the university they will need more than just mastery of the grammar rules. Grammar is important, of course, but is it okay to just limit on the lessons on the grammar rule? And then the target situation needs, for example, like the oral comprehension skills, oral expression skills, writing skills, and reading skills. Also, they also needed for the students to be able to take notes, for example, listen or follow a lecture in a lecture theater, and so on and so forth. So that's why I'm asking this question. And then the third question is, what difficulties do Anglophone students face at the university? So I'll have to explain this part now, because now I'm talking about Anglophone students. Why? Because my research is focused on Anglophone students, because at first I wanted to do the whole, like all students, regardless of their language, their official language in their countries. But then I saw that it would be a bulky research that requires almost the whole team. So I just focus on the Anglophone students. That's why here I'm asking about the Anglophone students, and then those who are just registered in the scientific fields of study. Those are the ones that I'm working on. So what difficulties do they face? Because here we're talking about the transition in between the Anglophone system from back home to Francophone system here in Morocco, and then on top of that, from secondary school education, from secondary school learning to university student studies rather. So with that change, what difficulties do these students face in their studies? And then the research objective was, as I said, it was to find out to what extent this French language course for the Francophone students in Morocco respond to the specific needs of these students by working with Anglophone students in all the scientific fields of study as our target population. So to answer these questions, we have I adopted the mixed method of approach to data collection. That is, I use questionnaires, and then I use observation of some lectures. I had to attend some lectures just to see the reality of the courses of the students that they face at the university, and then analyze the French textbooks and then and the pamphlets of the notes that they use at the university. So these data collection methods help me to analyze both qualitative and quantitative results. So for the results, I think I don't think I have enough time. How much time?
2 minutes. Yes.
All right, so I'll just try and go to the essential part. Okay, so as a summary of the results, so I'll just, since I don't have enough time, I'll just taken this particular example of a student to sum up the question that the answer that the student gave when the part of the questionnaire where I asked them to give their personal experience at the university, and this is what she or he said. So I'll read it as it is because it has some errors, but I just copied it. So it says, it's in French, ce n'est pas facile, nous faisons beaucoup de difficultés avec les langues car nous comprenons un peu de français, car le professeur changeait pour Arabia, nous perdons totalement, donc nous pour passer l'examen, on doit juste mémoriser. And nous comprenons rien. As long as we have passed, it's okay. But our problem will come in when we start working because we don't understand. Hence, we have to redo the lessons in English pour comprendre bien. Pour comprendre bien. Et les Marocains associent un peu avec nous, les Noirs. We feel down not because we are, but we can't express ourselves in the French language. So this is just like an overview of it's like a summary of all the expression of the needs of these students. So there's a language insufficiency, low language proficiency rather. Then there's a problem of social-cultural skills. They're not used to being exposed in a different context of learning, and then the difference in the difficulties in their learning, and then the strategy of what they use that is just memorizing just to pass. So whatever they're doing is just for them to get through and then pass the course. Then the rest they will find out as they say. So because of time I can't go through everything. So the conclusion is that the needs analysis is an important step that should never be neglected. So the results of this research is to expose or to discover that there's really a need for needs analysis for this language course at the Language Center, because initially, according to the director of the center, it wasn't they didn't do needs analysis from the beginning. So they just took a general course to teach to these students what they need specific needs for their university studies. Thank you for your attention, and I'm really sorry for coming.
I will move again directly. Thank you, Miriam, for your presentation. And we move to the third presentation now by Hassan Mouki about English language needs analysis of engineering students, the case of INSA at Qadi Iyad University. And Hassan Mouki is a professor of English at INSA Qadi Iyad University in Marrakesh. Repeat? It's okay? All right. And he's interested in different research areas, including applied linguistics, ELT, ESP, and research methodology. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the organizing committee for such an event. It's an opportunity for us to share ideas and find ideas about this very interesting topic. My talk today is about I'm here to share with you the findings of a study I conducted about English language needs analysis related to engineering students at INSA at Qadi Iyad University. My talk is organized as follows: an introduction, background and purpose of the study, research methodology, findings, implications, and a conclusion. As an introduction, we have here some concepts, ESP, ELT, and we need to reflect upon the differences between the two. For me, I don't think there is a very big difference between ESP and EGP, in the sense that an ESP teacher is a language teacher. The only difference maybe is related to the themes, topics discussed in an ESP class. An ESP emerged to satisfy the needs of. It claims that it emerged in order to satisfy the needs of learners. The correlation between English language teaching, the recent approaches, is that at ESP they are both learner-centered. They claim that the course is designed based on the students' needs, and the course is based on the findings of needs analysis research. As for the background and purpose of the study, it happened that when I received the call for paper to this conference, I was at the same time having the chance to start teaching at LINSA at the University, and it was my first experience. And at that time, I had to start teaching engineering students. In fact, I didn't have previous experience before that, and I had a suggested syllabus. So I thought of conducting a needs analysis for different purposes. For the first purpose, I believe that needs analysis research helps us at the end of the day to better understand the learners. So that's the primary concern of needs analysis. When I say to understand the learners, I mean to understand their preferences, their needs, their abilities, their levels, and their background, their educational background. Because the more you understand the learners, the better you are in position to come up with more effective teaching methods that can satisfy these needs. The purpose of this study was also to helpful in the sense that it helped me to design the course which I'm implementing now. It's also an opportunity for me, providing the opportunity to evaluate the suggested course description provided by the institution, and based on the results of this needs analysis, and after implementing the course I'm teaching now, we can analyze to what extent does this course satisfy the students' needs or not. And finally, through my humble research, I'm trying to contribute to the development of research on ESP and needs analysis. As for research methodology, the setting is LINSA at the University. The participants are third-year engineering students, and here we have in this field we have different branches: computer science engineering, electrical engineering, network engineering, logistics, and industrial engineering. And we are going to come back to this issue regarding different branches within the field of engineering. As for data collection method, I relied mainly on questionnaire and interviews of those students and some ESP teachers. Concerning the data analysis procedure, I relied on descriptive statistics using SPSS. Of course, I don't have time to go through all the statistical tables which provide frequencies about all the items included in the questionnaire, but I would like to focus on the main findings based on these figures. First conclusion is related to variability among respondents. The findings of the study reveal that we are in front of a heterogeneous group of learners, which is not different from any other class. Regarding the educational background, students were asked about whether they had their high school at public or private school. I found that majority, about 61% of the respondents, were high school students. Concerning their levels, they were asked about their level, how they rate their level in English: good, not good, or very good. about 25% evaluate themselves, think they are not good at English, but majority say they are good. This was supported by findings of a diagnostic test which I conducted at the very beginning of the semester, in which shows that there are various levels of students as far as their English language proficiency is concerned. Abilities also, there are differences, and needs as we are going to, and preferences as we will see. Another issue raised in the study was related to gender in engineering, and I noticed that most of the students of engineering students are females. When I came back to the previous years, I found that at the very beginning it was male-dominated field of study, but recently there has been an increase in the number of female students as engineering students, which used to be male-dominated. Another conclusion is that the students don't provide equal opportunities to the 4 language skills. And here I come back to the findings of the project conducted by Professor Lerus. Most students rate speaking and writing as the most important skills, and these are the skills which they think they have difficulties in. There was another question: which skills do you still face difficulties in? And again, they were speaking and listening. And this concerning the priorities and the importance given to the skills, I compared this conclusion with the suggested course description, and I found that the course descriptions still include elements like focusing on grammar points like teaching passive voice, teaching conditionals, teaching vocabulary items in isolation, which are not compatible with students' needs. As for language priorities, the students were provided with a list of language priorities, and they were asked to choose what constitutes for them a priority. And I found that one of their priorities is to become a fluent speaker of English, to become fluent and accurate writer of English, and to improve my test scores. One of the priorities revealed by the respondents is that they were more interested in improving their test scores. There was a section in which I tried to include different sub-skills of each of the 4 skills, and for example, when it comes to reading for main idea, reading for details, and other skills, and I found that these skills, I concluded that most of these skills are related to what we do in class, task-based activities and tasks in which students are required to do in class, means that they are more interested in their immediate needs in the classroom context. So there were more focus on sub-skills related to the classroom context. As for instructional practices, there was a section in which I asked students to evaluate the previous course and to what extent they were satisfied or not satisfied with the course. And there were differences in the responses of students. And there were some who said, yeah, we were satisfied with the previous course, but some who were not. And I tried to understand why, and I came back to their results in the course. And I found that they base their satisfaction, satisfied or not, based on their final grade in the course. Concerning the practices, teaching practices, there was a question about do you like to be taught through lectures or class discussions and participation? And most of the students opted for having class discussions and debates rather than having lectures. Another issue raised in the questionnaire was related to attendance. For the institution, attendance is obligatory. But when I asked the students about this issue, they had three options. For you, attendance is optional, obligatory, or obligatory and part of course evaluation. I discovered that more than 50% of the students would like the course to be optional. And the majority, when they choose obligatory, they would like it to be part of course evaluation. When it comes to course evaluation, I asked the students, do you think that the way you are evaluated should be considered? And just to give you an idea about the way they were used to be evaluated, they were in the form of two written tests, a midterm test and a final test. But when I asked them whether they would like this system of evaluation to be reconsidered, more than 90% of the respondents say yes. And I asked them the question, how would you like to be evaluated? And the majority opted for including presentations, in addition to class participation and final test. They opted for no midterm written test, but they would like to have class participation presentations as part of the course evaluation. So these are some of the main findings which I have concluded based on the figures, as you will see in the proceedings about the frequencies and statistical descriptive statistics. Concerning implications, I have pedagogical implications and implications for research. I do believe better understanding of the learner can make the teachers in a better position to devise courses, teaching materials, select teaching materials which can best suit their students' needs and abilities. Concerning the variability in the interests of students, there should be some kind. The teachers should vary their themes and topics discussed and raised in the classroom. And again, I would like to come back here to the fact that there are different branches: computer science, electrical, and different branches. Whereas the course was designed in a way as if all these students have the same needs, which should be reconsidered. In addition to varying themes and topics, we need also to vary tasks and activities to cater for different students' multiple intelligences, styles, and abilities and levels. Select appropriate and appealing teaching materials. Focus on speaking and writing. So these are the skills which students need. They think they need more practice on, and I think they are related to the way they prefer the course to be evaluated. So this shows that our students are still test-oriented. I do believe that through considering and implementing students' needs and paying attention to their listening to the students, we can build their self-confidence, engagement, and motivation to learn. Another point is that we need more communication between different stakeholders. What I mean here, specifically between the institutions should listen to students. As for basically the points regarding attendance, I think the students have the right to choose, to decide, and later they assume the responsibility of their choice. There is no harm in that, I do believe. Concerning implications for research, more research is needed to to have more comprehensive image about the students' needs. We need to combine both qualitative and quantitative research, sample size. We need to include different stakeholders to question students, teachers, employers, administration, and other stakeholders. And we need continuous assessment of the ASP course. And this is something which is very, very, very important. As a conclusion, to what extent we need analysis? Yeah, of course, I think I do believe that we need that. It's part of our professional development, as long as we believe that it's not an end, as raised by the question of Professor Larousse. So what after having presented all these case studies, about frequencies, about figures, I think it's now time to question these figures and to try to understand and to interpret these figures. This can help us better understand students' needs for better course design, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much for respecting time. And now we move to the fourth presentation. The analysis of learners' needs in using ICT to learn English in higher education by Mr. Tariq Omklul. Tariq Omklul is a PhD candidate at the Faculty of Letters and Human Sciences, Meknes, and he has been teaching English language since 2006. He got both his BA and master degrees in applied linguistics in the same faculty. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry. And I'd like to thank the organizing committee for organizing such a highly academic event. Also, my special thanks go to our dear professors and colleagues who are attending with us here in this event. So the title, the objective of my presentation is to report on a small-scale study I conducted in the University of Science in Meknes. So as you see, this is the title. Here we have two keywords. We have learner needs, of course, and we have using ICT. So this is the aim of the study. So the aim of the study is to explore students' subjective needs with regard to ICT tools to study English. Also, the current study investigates the students' perceptions towards using ICT to learn English. In this respect, two research questions are put forward. First one is, what are ICT-based material needs of students in their course, in their English course? The second question is, what are students' perceptions? And when we talk about perception, of course, we talk about opinions and what are students' perceptions of ICT use to learn English language? Here, so this is the outline following. First, short introduction, followed by a short review of literature, the importance of ICT in education. Then I move to talk about needs analysis with a special focus on process-oriented needs analysis. Then methodology, findings, and short conclusion. Of course, the use of integrating ICT in education has become a necessity to face the challenges of the new millennium. And we know that our needs and the needs of the students are constantly changing with time. So ICT is inevitably necessary. Intervention of ICT is inevitably necessary in the process of in this classroom. In English classrooms. And the ultimate goal of integrating ICTs into the classroom, of course, is to improve the quality of the learning experience. Also, to produce a highly and social, authentic, supportive, productive environment that allows students to construct relevant knowledge. So here, I don't want to read all the definitions here, but I try to give my the operational definition that I use in this within this framework of this case study. So the case study, ICTs here are limited to the following. We have wikis, websites, social media, e-books, blogging, podcasts, mobile applications, PowerPoint, then course management system, mainly Moodle and Edmodo. I choose this. I opted for these two management systems because they are popular and known to students. Of course, nobody can deny the importance of that ICT brings to the classroom practices. And here we have the use of ICT in the classroom can promote deep learning. And by deep learning here, we mean the high-order thinking skills, like, for example, analyzing, evaluating, and creating, which of course come at the top of Bloom's taxonomy theory of learning. And of course, ICT is not only the backbone of information age, but also an important catalyst and tool for inducing educational reforms that change our students into productive knowledge workers. And also there is another point, is that ICT fosters learner-centeredness, because it provides learners with a chance to choose manners of their learning. And here when we talk about learner-centeredness, we inevitably talk about meeting students' needs, because their needs come at the top of the learning process. So which leads us here to talk about needs analysis. Of course, I'm not going to read the definition of the needs analysis. I'm going to focus more on the process-oriented. So needs analysis here can be categorized, of course, into objective needs and subjective needs. Also, needs analysis can be defined in terms of product-oriented needs analysis. Product-oriented here focuses more on the what of learning and the outcome, whereas process-oriented needs analysis gives more emphasis to the how, to the process of learning, which takes into account learners' humanistic needs. Also, process-oriented needs analysis encourages learners to take responsibility and to be independent. Also, when we talk here about independence, Noonan, 1995, maintained that in order for students to be independent learners, students have to be aware of their learning styles and learning strategies. And here we have emphasis on the word aware, which means awareness. And here Noonan listed five levels of learner-centeredness. The first one, as you see in the base, which is the basis, of course, is awareness. And learners here identify strategy applications of pedagogical tasks and identify their own preferred styles and strategies. So which means that being aware of one's needs is the basis towards learner-centeredness. So now I'll move to methodology. So the methodology here, this is of course the research design. This is an exploratory research design. The participants here are 45 students from the 2 chemistry classes studying in first year master's degrees in Monash Main University. Concerning the instrumentation, I used a questionnaire here. The instrument used here is a questionnaire. 5-point Likert scale is used, ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and also open-ended questions are incorporated in this instrument. Concerning the findings, the first research question: what are ICT-based materials needs of students in their English course? Here, as you can see, 60.7% agree that PowerPoint should be integrated into their classroom. Of course, PowerPoint has been shown to, or some studies have confirmed that using a PowerPoint in the classroom can have many beneficial merits because it uses the graphs and illustrations, and also it improves students' memories, as well as it enhances the multiple and supports the multiple intelligences of learners. Also, mobile applications have been chosen as one of their needs, with 42.2 agree and 15.6 strongly agree. Of course, mobile phones can provide a very flexible environment for learners in the classroom. Also here we have podcasts, 37.8 and 11.1 agree that podcasts should be incorporated in their classroom. One major and surprising finding is that 33.7 students agreed that they want to incorporate learning management systems in their learning, not only in the classroom, of course, it's outside classrooms. And learning management systems have been proved to provide a constructive environment that is highly conducive to learning. And let's move now to the second question, research question. What are students' perceptions of ICT use to learn English? Here, as you see, the majority of students here have a positive attitude towards ICT. 76.6 believe that using ICTs help them learn English effectively. Also, 70% of students strongly agree that ICT can improve their speaking skills. Then, of course, 62.2 of students believe that ICT can improve their writing skills. So, yeah, here we have also, as you can see, yeah, this is it. My small-scale study has some implications. The first one is teaching material should take into account students' ICT needs. Also, teachers should be encouraged to integrate ICT in their teaching practices. Instructional material should be embedded in e-learning platforms, as I mentioned before, like the learning management systems, to give more space for learners to interact with their peers, teachers, in a virtual world that is conducive to learning. And finally, as the Professor Aziz Kaur mentioned earlier in his presentation, why not digitalize the curriculum? And thank you for your attention.
Now we are going to move immediately to the last presentation of this panel, Higher Education in the 21st Century Skills and the 21st Century Skills, presented by Professor Munir Benish. And he is a PhD candidate, Faculty of Arts and Humanities, Ibn Tufayl, Kenitra, and a teacher of Communication and Thinking Skills, CPTE, preparatory classes of higher schools of engineering, Omar ibn al-Khattab, Meknes, Morocco. He is freelance translator and public speaking coach, and he participated in many national and international conferences targeting communication in context, education, current challenges, cooperative learning and teaching, and education and civic engagement. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, I would like first to thank the organizing committee for this linguistic and cultural gathering. And it is an opportunity to see a lot of colleagues and friends we haven't seen them for a long time, and even our professors, because I studied here, I did my third cycle in Fez, now I am furthering my study in Kenitra, and I'm working in Meknes, so it is really opportunity to meet a lot of researchers in the field of education, in culture, in applied linguistics, in education, in a lot of fields. This is a good opportunity, and I congratulate the organizing community for this gathering. So my presentation, as it is planned, a higher education and 21st century skills. So why a lot of researchers talking about this, and a lot of research is done about this subject, and we still discuss the topic. Maybe some people, they say, okay, higher education and 21st century, we hear about that, we read about that, we did presentation about that. But it is a really problematic issue. A lot of problems now, it is about education, because we are preparing students to be not just students in class, but to shift from the classroom to the community, and this is really challenging in this context. So my presentation is outlined as the following: introduction, the 21st century professor, the 21st century students, the 21st century classroom, the partnership for 20th century learning, critical thinking and higher education, teaching critical thinking for life learning, and learning to learn. So the goal of 21st century education, the first goal is it is an alternative to traditional teaching. And here we are talking about the banking model of education. The banking model of education, it is a concept created by Paulo Freire. Paulo Freire is a Brazilian. He was a Brazilian philosopher in education, and he sacrificed all his life for the critical pedagogy that is making change not just in classroom but in the whole system. He is a great philosopher in engaged. He is not just education in class, but he is really an active citizen, active for students from poor background to have even a voice in the classroom. So the banking concept of education, it is really a calamity in teaching. Because I still remember, even at the university level, a lot of teachers, they give polycopy, a lot of papers, and you have to learn them, and you answer questions. And your degree of intelligence or smartness, it depends on what you learn by heart. And this is a crime against students, because they are just take these things, and these things not just preparing them to be in this level, but just to shrink in the society. And this is really problematic. And now we find even a phenomenon, even I believe, because I teach students in preparatory classes, future engineers who got their baccalaureate with 18 out of 20. But when I teach them, I think that they are not even using logic in their daily practices. So how those students who are supposed to be the elitist class in society, to make change in society, they are learning things by heart. Because even with my teachers of maths, I discuss with them, sometimes what they give them input, they have to understand the knowledge, to understand it, and to apply it. I think this is about maths teacher. Do you think that this is teaching? Do you think that students, they will be creative creators in the future? So I think that is no. But really because sometimes they are given a certain paradigm, formula, they have to, and sometimes they even do a lot of extra hours to understand. But when it's time to understand these things, to make synthesis and even evaluation, that is said by Bloom, this is really paradoxical in this context. So the creating context for interaction, questioning, debating, and expressing view, that is really a problem. And with my students, sometimes they feel pleasure when they discuss and they disagree. And they still remember, because I used to study with some teachers, even you discuss with the idea of the person, so we will be penalized for that. So we have the kind of Hitlerism in classroom, so which means you cannot even talk. I still remember, because I have heard in my side. Because I still remember I was a teacher and they was studying and they was trembling in class because of the teachers. Because if you disagree with the teacher, you will be penalized by that. They are excellent and they have nothing to say. So it is not, we are not targeting the sick, but they are targeting the sickness. So those teachers, maybe they are victim of a certain paradigms. Because sometimes we don't have just education, we have indoctrination. And we still remember that in high school, if the teacher is following a secular ideology, he will see the truth from this paradigm. And if you negotiate with him from different paradigm, you will be able to. The same thing for the teacher is adopting religious ideology, he will be a preacher in the class. He is not a teacher, but the real teacher is neutral. He is saying the truth, he is just facilitating the thought, but he is neutral. Because sometimes you are supposed to agree with the teacher in order not to be penalized for that. And that even in master programming, wherever, because they are self, because they want to impose themselves through this kind of behavior. So when we don't have questioning, we have debating, expressing, because you are not discussing with, arguing with with the person, but the ideas. If you oppress those students, and Paulo Freire in his, I'm sending a book about the liberating pedagogy from the oppressive pedagogy, is liberating humans. Imagine that sometimes you can find in Western countries, so professors, they are like friends and they'll deal, but when there is serious, there is serious. But when there is the humanistic side, there is the humanistic side. So, and here we are talking about just trying to give information, so students, they will be empowered just about knowledge. But the rule of education 21st century is to develop skills of the learners, skills and dispositions, because maybe they will forget about knowledge in context, but they will remember these skills because these skills are highly important because there will be transfer in the real life. And this is the ultimate goal of education in this context. So, boosting self-centered learning, because when you develop skills of students, how to do research, how to do tasks, because sometimes when you take a student to make a presentation with PowerPoint, you are not just introducing him to knowledge, but they will learn skills, how to manipulate this gadget, how to do a lot of things. And this is the purpose. So they are given knowledge, but they learn even skills. So develop specific work and life skills, because at the end of the day, when students they finish their study, where they go? Because if they cannot fit in the markets or vocational training, so what is the rationale behind even spending time to memorize these things or to learn these things if they don't use them in context? So, and even in their life, when they discuss with people, and sometimes when they are oppressed in their learning, they will make reproduction. They will reproduce these things. And this is not just students who are victims, but even the society will be victimized in this. So creating spaces for communication, collaboration, problem solving, and decision making. So when we communicate with students, so because you convince through argument, and this is the rationale behind even education. So when you communicate with people, and here we are talking about dialogism. Dialogism is not just about text. It is about humans, feeling of humans. And when there is communication, so the task of education will be easier. So collaboration, so we work in, and they see a phenomenon with my students in preparatory classes. So there is competition, and this is created by the system. Because they have to get the concours français, etc., students, they don't share information. Sometimes they are in their rooms, but when someone knocks at their doors, they gather all these things and they change what they are doing because they want to keep these things for themselves because there is competition. But we have competition. At the same time, we can collaborate and we share information. Maybe when you share with others, they will give you another document maybe you will never dream to have. So problem solving is to solve problems. So students, they should be put in context to think, to give their alternative. So to be, because when they solve problems in class, maybe they need to solve these things even in their daily life. And to this decision makers, which means they can take decisions by themselves. So the 21st century professor is constantly updated, which means that he should read a lot. Because sometimes you can find there is no research, there is no reading, and how can you give a new output to students? Because maybe sometimes you can find the teacher, professor, teaching with the same document. Maybe I know a teacher taught the father and the students with the same documents. Maybe after 20 years, they have the same documents, which means they don't change, they don't
do any research? Did you do any research to give us proof?
No,
it's very,
we cannot overgeneralize. So in discussion, we cannot overgeneralize because there are some serious researches.
You don't overgeneralize.
Yes,
come on, I'm just, I feel...
Following the latest teaching methods, which means sometimes you can find the teachers, they are digital immigrants, but they have to make effort. Because even we can find digital natives, they are introduced to digital, to this world through digital immigrants. So no longer the teacher knows all as in traditional teaching. So which means he's not supposed to be the source of information. But we can discuss, and we can even, it is mutual benefit from the students and the teacher. The teacher is facilitator, the task, and motivator. So sometimes you have to develop even about motivation, internal motivation, which means to make students to love what they are doing, because even external motivations outside the reward, sometimes they are not working in this context, but more internal motivations, so they are really matters. Okay, so it's time. So in order to respect time, so thank you for your attention, and let's call it a day.
Thank you so much. I would like to apologize because I was a little bit in a hurry, but I was given instructions to respect time. So you have exactly 10 minutes, right? So 10 minutes means 5 minutes to get your questions and 5 minutes to respond. I mean, our dear speakers are going to respond in 5 minutes. So let me take the first one. Yes. Professor Yunus.
I started, you know.
You started already, so I will put Professor Ekbu as well. Yes?
No, just go ahead.
No problem. It's already No.
نعم. Okay, so I will stop here, and I will ask our dear audience to be as brief as they can. And I will start by you, Professor.
No, go on.
Okay, it's okay.
Go ahead.
Well, my first question is to Professor Amidas. Don't you agree that what you've presented, or the claims you made in your presentations are relative? They are not the facts about are relative. Okay, about the guidelines of how an abstract should be. Because I noticed that you made a very strong claim by saying, I went over the abstracts submitted for this conference, and I noticed that the majority do not meet the requirements, which is, in my opinion, a very strong claim, because here we have. But even the example you brought. I mean, the idea is maybe the author there was just to establish a common ground for abstract writing, but this is not the truth in itself. I mean, he can be right, because when we go over literature, we notice that we have different versions of abstracts, and when you made your claim, students here may understand that we as professors, we are doing the wrong thing. Okay? So that's my comment or question. The second one is for Mr. Nish. I think I couldn't in fact understand the nature or the objectives of your study, because I feel that all what you said, we already know it. Okay? And I noticed that you fell in what we call the stereotypes or the taken for granted. Maybe because when you say, you talked about the banking model, the questioning, the debating stuff and stuff, I think that this is not the reality. Because teachers today are, at least the majority, are fully aware of this, and they are doing great efforts. We have today teachers as researchers, and they are totally familiar with this. Maybe if you said this 30 or 40 years ago, maybe we could accept that. But for today, I don't think that's it.
We let you.
No, we speak it.
I could accept that, but we.
You can react.
No.
Yeah, okay, anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Epu. And be brief, please.
I am the one who has never, used the microphone. I'll tell you a little anecdote. When I was for my practicum to be the one I am now, that is 40 years ago, I was before a jury, the hardest in the world. And I gave I just presented my performance and everything, and I had only one question. What was it? It was by Mr. Dehmi. Said, tell me, how many lessons, how many courses can you give like this? I had no microphone, nothing. So I said, thank to God for this microphone here. So this is ICT, innate ICT, inherent. I was not going to talk because yesterday, if you remember what I said, I gave some tributes, and I think it should be respected. Mr. Finish, you are from Kenitra. You are preparing something, Kenitra, no? Who's your supervisor? Okay, so Anas Khadija is one of the 20th century or 21st century? Mr. Finish, you should mind what you're saying. Because at least you said, I'm talking about exceptions. I'm not happy with all the teaching stuff in Morocco. Yes, but there are exceptions. But I don't care about the exceptions. I care about the thing. No, is it based on research? What you said about the teacher of the 20, I don't know. Me as 1990 century, whatever, I don't know.
19th century.
Is it?
I'm talking about my context in which I teach.
Because now let me react to your presentation. It was clumsy, really getting us astray. I didn't know what you were talking about, except onslaughts on teachers. 21st are okay; they should be updated. If I am one of them, and the staff I think is all like me, and you the 22nd, I don't know. It really did us harm. Just is it based on research? You did not prove it. So you have to. I think you have to.
Thank you, Professor Epu.
It's not. We are in a realm for research. We are not here for personal polemics or. You attack the person, and it's great for research.
I'm talking about some teachers.
Say it. Say some teachers. Name them. So Anas Khadija is like me, and I'm happy to be a supervisor like Anas Khadija.
Thank you so much.
And that was not a question.
Now I move to Aziz, please. Be brief.
All right. First of all, thank you, presenters, for your insightful presentations.
You speak up and stand up.
All right. So thank you for your presentations. First question is addressed to Mr. Miki. I want to ask you a question, and I allow myself to go back to one of the questions I asked in the previous panels. Do we really have ESP courses in Morocco? Do we really have ESP courses in Morocco? Because, as you said in the beginning of your presentation, and also to my knowledge, that the institutions of technology and science that are the subject of this conference, they just hire AGP teachers and they ask them to teach English without even giving them some pre-designed syllabuses or courses that they can use. And this is something that happens to me personally. I once signed a contract with an institution. I asked them, what am I supposed to teach? And they told me, just teach English. Teach them some English. And it was a vocational school.
Talk to them.
Question number 2, do we have teachers who are trained to teach in an ESP context? Because again, given the fact that an ESP teacher needs to be trained not only at English, that is the language that he uses in music instruction, but he needs also to be trained in the field of specialism of those learners that he's going to teach, which makes it a bit hard. That's for Mr. Hassan Miki, and for Munir Benish. You said you are a teacher and a teacher too. That's why I want to ask you. You have put much blame on the teachers. You blame them for not encouraging learners to sharpen their critical thinking skills. To some extent, I agree with you, but don't you think that you exaggerate? Because we have also to blame decision makers. Because I know some teachers who have been recruited and they are sent to teach without having received any training. This is for me a crime against our little beloved students.
Thank you,
Thank you
Aziz.
very much.
Wahid?
Thank you, Mrs. Chairwoman. My question is directed to Mr. Mohammed Mlis. I've noticed in your presentation that your abstract is taken from your PhD thesis, right? And it encapsulates keywords. As far as I know, no keywords should be written in an MA or a PhD thesis. To formulate the question, do you think that abstracts written in published journals are the same as those written in PhD or MA thesis? My second question goes for Mr. Munir Benish. To be honest with you, learning things by heart has served me, quite great for the past few years. Now, can you please demystify the hurdles that a student can be exposed to if he collaborates between learning by heart and understanding? Thank you.
Yes, we move to Anam.
Thank you, dear professors, for these presentations. In fact, I have just a comment, not a question. Concerning promoting and fostering the 21st century skills in education is among the hot debate or debatable issues nowadays. Concerning your presentation, sir, I think promoting creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, communication are really are necessary or are important to promote students' learning and motivation. But I think it should start from elementary school education, because at that age kids are more ready to learn and promote and develop their skills, not to wait till they are adults. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Abhishek.
Well, thank you very much. But I'm not going to use the mic, by the way. Well, thank you very much for all the panelists. My question is addressed to Mr. Mlis. Well, I have come across many different abstracts. Well, thank you very much for all the panelists. My question is addressed to Mr. Mlis. Well, I have come across many abstracts, be it in Moroccan context or in the Western universities. So some are talking about we should normally mention the findings of the study, and some are not. Sometimes they don't mention the findings of the study. So which of which we are going to opt for? And thank you very much.
Thank you. Walid?
I would like to thank our panel for their presentations, and especially thanks to Munir Benish. Now, this is neither a question nor a comment, this is a student's lament. I believe what is worth analyzing and investigating is why we are, particularly in our university, in an intellectual recession. Why we need most, I think, is free access to library, having seriously fair-minded professors, and we definitely need to change the approach of doing only questionnaires in the research paper, because it's a dead data. And also, we need the complete freedom and support to work on the topics of intellectual value that can drive the country. And what we need is students making of themselves intellectually splendid masterpieces.
Thank you, Wally. It's interesting. And the last one is Professor Abad.
I have just two things. Citizen, I do commend you for your work. That's interesting. And my question is, don't you think that needs analysis should be focusing on the content of the course rather than the methodology? Because a lot of what has been said, including the ICT, are part of the methodology and of teaching. So, what are we talking about? We talk about the needs and then we talk about somebody else, the teacher and things like that. I think we have to be very clear. We have to determine, and this has been expressed, even when we consider critical thinking. I think that this is not what should be addressed. This is one of the students raised, that it should be taught from elementary school, and this introduction of these things is part of the methodology. It's not a content issue. Now, I will go to you, Miriam. Yeah, that's great work. My question is, how your work is beneficial to your country, and how much effective is it to this country in terms of applicability? This is one. The second is, have you traced back the outcomes of students coming from Anglo-Saxon African countries and their results in this country throughout at least a period, because this has been going on for several. And what has it yielded? What are the outcomes? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Abad. Now, over here.
We have to make things clear. I think when the reality is brought up, it hurts. So I think that this presentation, every one of us has found himself in. And let me tell you a story. Last year, a friend of mine was about to submit his PhD thesis in law and economics in Canada, came to me and asked me to revise and look how his thesis was organized. And I found it many dysfunctioning things in that thesis, and I asked him to go to his supervisor first. And 1 month he came and asked me, and I told him, what was your teacher's response and advice? He told me that, look, go to the library, find the PhD thesis, and do as the others did. This is unacceptable. Unacceptable. This is irresponsible reactions from a supervisor. And I think what I have presented is grounded in theory. And the references that I presented belong to prominent scholars who did many research on different disciplines, be it in pure sciences, or in human sciences, or in how to write articles for journals or PhD thesis. So, when I said that the article should abide by format content, I mean that it should abide because those people who have devoted much time to research said that. And when I measured the abstract of the student, I found great and many deficiencies in those abstracts. So my reaction to my friend, write the abstract as it is, and don't be afraid, because we are victims of misunderstanding. And maybe some teachers, they don't not understand how to write an abstract, and they put pressure on the student, said, write it like this. So this is unacceptable from a teacher, let alone from a student. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Milides. Now we move to Miriam, please. Could you briefly again answer your questions?
What about the keywords in the abstract?
Right then. And there is no difference, by the way, there is no difference between an abstract for a research paper and a thesis. They reflect your work. So better if you assert all the moves. Otherwise, you set your abstract to a journal and it will be refuted. This is what is flagrant in this booklet. This is reality. We should not be afraid of it.
Yes, but excuse me for a minute, please. Here again, when we talk about abstract writing, we need to go back to the publication manual of APA, because it's the real guidelines of writing abstracts, and there is everything in it. Because as long as we are all part of social sciences research.
Let me tell you one thing. Go to the website of Auckland and Adelaide universities in Australia and New Zealand, and you will find ready-made templates for all parts of the research. This is what we recommend departments in our university do. If research doesn't fit and doesn't do what should be done, so the department should provide ready-made templates, at least that students might find some references to.
Mr. Melis, you are still making strong claims.
I promised that there will be a seminar about how to write an abstract and an outline and an introduction and even a research paper, so don't worry that now I'm running out of time, so I'm going to... Miriam, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, sir, for your question. So, the first question about how beneficial this research is to my country. I think for me personally, the first question had merged to the second question because for my explanation it will be the same. So for the second question, tracing the results, the success of the students who finished the course that is. That's the question? The success, okay. I've not yet done that because my focus is on the first year students because it's mostly the low proficiency in French is mostly felt in the first and second semester. And because of that, most students they fail or they redo their first year. And because of that also, most students they abandon the course that they initially wanted to do. They go to do another course, and that affects their progress in their studies. So it's like their dreams are not made. They just do a course just to finish and go home because they are not adapting to French, the French language. So I think this would be beneficial because the results can lead into conducting need analysis in the language center. It will help to improve the course, and then the beneficiaries of the scholarship will not just be coming and learning for the sake of just earning a degree, but they will learn to have the competences that they need, and when they go back home, they'll be able to use those things in them.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you so much. We move now to Professor Bonki.
Yeah, thank you very much for the questions. The first question was, is there any ESP course in Morocco? Yes, there are ESP courses in Morocco. The second question about ESP and the GP, I said that ESP is a language teacher as GP in addition to the role of designing the course based on the needs analysis results. You also raised the question about teacher training. We need teacher training. I don't think that we really need that, simply because it's through research and continuous reflection and evaluation of yourself, and that's part of your responsibility to improve and develop professionally. Concerning the Professor Qadir's question, yeah, I do agree with you. What is very important in the syllabus or the course design, but the how is also because the needs analysis findings give us an idea about different learning styles, preferences, abilities, levels. But when we decide about the what, we need also to have we are in a better position to decide about how these learners can benefit better from the course. I wasn't asked the question, but regarding the success of our role as ESP practitioners or language teachers, I think it's much related to the extent to which we are ready to share power with our students.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for your reaction, and we are here to learn from each other and to interact. Okay, so just because of time constraints, I will not give even the opportunity to clarify what I'm talking about. But to tell you the truth, in my context at least, I feel that students, because the students of engineering schools, they are, for example, this is for their future. And you know that the coefficient of maths or physics, if the teacher did not give them, and sometimes these marks, they are not based on real productivity. And this is really problematic. Maybe 21st century for our context it is understood, but when we discuss it with the people who are outside the department, it is about the problem of English, so there are a lot of differences. So here we cannot talk about all that what is presented is good and all what is presented is bad. It is in between. So from this, students can make a difference. So we can memorize, because we cannot deny that all things that they should be learned in context. So we have even something to memorize things, but you have to understand it. To understand what is, even you are learning things by heart. Because sometimes even the way we are used to learn poetry by heart, and even about how we perform them. So we find that we are boxed in a way. We can find poetry, etc., to understand these things and to perform. This is good, which means you mingle between competence and performance. And here we are in need of knowledge, but skills and dispositions are highly required because we have the transfer. So this is really problematic about primary education and the introducing criticality. This is very important because sometimes even now we can find a lot of students now in primary schools. Now they put even for them smart TVs, which means they cannot even, they are receptive. They are just receiving. And now to make that they are modern or smart schools, they are displaying to them these things, but this is hindering their capacities.
Thank you so much, Professor. Okay, I will stop here. It seems that nothing is satisfactory for the moment, so we are still improving ourselves as teachers, you know. I mean, no, we're not going to stop. So every day is going to be a challenge for us, but also we ask our students to push their challenges far away from reality, you know. I would like to thank all the speakers in this panel, and I inform our dear audience that there will be no break, and we move immediately, because there is no tea and coffee again. Yeah, but we'll move to the next panel immediately, so I'll ask all the panelists to take their seats. Thank you so much, everyone.
Panel on this conference. So without much ado, I will give the floor quickly to our first speaker, Si Mohammed Ayman Sbai. His paper is entitled Post Method Pedagogy in Moroccan EFL Classroom. So Si Mohammed Ayman Sbai is a PhD student in Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah University. His interests include applied linguistics and critical pedagogy. Please, the floor is yours.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello again. Good afternoon. So as you can see, my presentation is entitled Reflections on Post-Method Pedagogy in Moroccan EFL Classrooms, the case study of high schools in Majlis. So the outline is as follows. So I'm going to start with theoretical background, some definitions, then move into the result methodology and then results and discussions before moving to the applications at the end. So starting with, so throughout the history of language teaching, there have always been attempts to find solutions to classroom-related problems. And these solutions have always been considered in the introduction of some methods, some approaches and theories to compensate for previous ones which were found to be defective, ineffective or impractical. But since the development of the GTM, the grammar translation method in the 19th century, researchers and practitioners in the field of language teaching have never been satisfied with one single method, as they kept searching for the best method that could be timeless, universal, applicable, and generalizable across any context. Unfortunately, this mission has never been accomplished because many teachers said that they struggle when trying to bridge the gap between theory and practice. So this problem has led to something else, which is teachers started going beyond methods. So they started going beyond methods by either combining methods or constructing their own methodologies based on their experiences and as teachers and as former students also. So this growing dissatisfaction has led to the emergence of many innovative practices or teaching practices such as critical pedagogy, action research, negotiated syllabus, reflective teaching, to name only a few. So recently, many teachers and researchers believe that the era of method has gone and that the field of language teaching has moved to a new era, which is the post-method era. So first, we have what is post-method pedagogy? So prior to defining post-method pedagogy, I would like to, it's of paramount importance to define what we mean by a teaching method first. So according to the Longman Dictionary of Language Teaching and Applied Linguistics, a language teaching method is a way of teaching a language which is based on systematic principles and procedures, which is an application of views in how language is best taught and learned, and a particular theory of language and language learning. Also, Nannen, 2003, defined it as a single set of procedures which teachers are to follow in the classroom. So, post-method pedagogy, many people would say that it's a method, but it's not a method. It is not an alternative method, but it's an alternative to method or to the deficiencies experienced by the employment of methods. So, Prabhu said that post-method pedagogy values the teacher's potential by emphasizing their experiences as teachers, parents, caretakers, and students, which are underestimated in the implementation of existing methods. So it is actually it's a shift from a top-down approach to a bottom-up approach, as Kamalvadi puts it. So he said teachers theorize what they practice and practice what they theorize. So the limitations of these methods has led to the realization that method has diminished rather than enhanced our understanding of language teaching. So this is according to Pennycook, 1989. Also, Jarvis goes a step further to say that language teaching might be better understood and better executed if the concept of method were not to exist at all. So, post-method pedagogy or post-method researchers believe now that there is no best method, there is no timeless method, there is no universal method that we can follow, and that teachers must not be passive consumers of methods but must concentrate on themselves and construct their own methodologies of teaching. So to summarize this view, Akbari in 2008 said that post-method pedagogy condition is a more democratic approach to language teaching professions. It assigns a voice to practitioners and respects the type of knowledge they possess. In addition, it's a liberatory move which gives teachers more autonomy and confidence in the decisions they make in their classes. So many people would think that post-method means total freedom, or they would confuse it with eclecticism, maybe. So normally, before moving to that, I think that the question that we can ask is, does this combination that teachers make today and a post-method pedagogy, or is it just a random eclecticism? So there was a study published by Bell, 2007, and he said that teachers most of the time explain their teaching methodologies as being eclectic, and they say that I often take from a piece from here and a piece from there, I just combine them all, and this is eclecticism. But eclecticism is more than that. It's not just like putting together procedures from language teaching methods just randomly like that without relying on any guiding principles before that. So Stern supports this stand and says the weakness of the eclectic possession is that it offers no criteria according to which we can determine which is the best method or theory. Therefore, it's too broad and too vague. So again, Kumar Abadibu, 2003, joins him in his view and says that the teachers find themselves struggling to methodological words, one that is imposed on them, of course by the pre-service training programs maybe, or by the government, by the guidelines, the ministry guidelines, and another which is improvised by them when they feel that there is an overlap in the experience of overlap in the bridging of the gap between the theory and practice. So post-method pedagogy does not mean at all freedom or randomness, because while constructing your methodology of teaching, you have to bear in mind some, we can say, guidelines that, because of time constraints, I will not be able to tackle them. But you can check Stern's 3-dimensional frameworks and Kumar Abadibu's 10 micro-strategic frameworks. So moving now to the research methodology. So my objective in this study was to investigate Moroccan teachers' attitudes toward the applicability of the method-based pedagogy. It aimed also at evaluating the practices teachers are more likely to resort to in order to compensate for the potential limitations of conventional methods. So the research questions I was trying to answer are as follows. So, to what extent Moroccan high school teachers are satisfied with conventional methods? If they are not satisfied, what are the reasons behind their dissatisfaction with and non-commitment to method? And what teaching practices teachers are more likely to resort to? And finally, are they equipped with the skills necessary to develop an informed or enlightened eclecticism? So regarding this sample population and the data collection procedure, the target population of this study was Moroccan high school, public high school teachers in Meknes. So the sample population consisted of 51 teachers, which represented 43 of the total number of teachers of English in Meknes. Of course, I'm talking about high school teachers. The sampling technique by which the population was selected was random sampling for the sake of an objective survey. And finally, a questionnaire was administered to Moroccan high school teachers, which included not only close-ended questions, but also open-ended questions to allow us to go beyond the statistics and to provide more justifications to the answers. So moving now to the results and discussions. So the first question that the teachers were asked was, to what extent do you feel satisfied with the methods previously taught to you? And as you can see, so 78% said no. Moving now to another question, which was an open-ended question, and in which they were asked the question, what difficulties do you often face while implementing conventional methods? And these are some of the comments provided by the teachers. Respondent 33 says some methods need special equipment, while others require a limited number of students. It's just impossible to implement them in a country like Morocco. Respondent 48 said, how can I apply a method that requires less than 20 students and the number of facilities in a room one can hardly call a language classroom? No CD player, no computer, no data show. Two other comments by teachers. The first one, the main difficulty is the context where these methods are implemented. I mean by the context the number of students in the classroom's infrastructure the students' difference, the size of the classes, and so on. And they said that none of them pertain to any of the methods previously learned or taught to them. And the next one talked about needs analysis maybe, so we need to analyze the needs of the students in our country and look for methods that support their learning styles and culture. Another question was asked I asked them to react to some statements ranging from strongly agree to strongly disagree, and most of them disagreed to strongly disagree that I'm satisfied with the established method. So it means that they are not satisfied. Most of them, between strongly agree and agree, said I use an eclectic approach to language teaching. So another question, how many methods do you employ in your classroom? And they said a combination of different methods. So now looking at the alternative teaching practice was eclecticism as an alternative practice. So the question that they were asked, was it a random or principled eclecticism? And many or most of them said, I mainly rely on my intuitive judgments, which means that it's not an informed eclecticism, but a random one. So just to save time, moving to the implications, and I think that the problem that might be posed in the field of language teaching today is that even though there have been frequent calls for teachers to develop an enlightened eclecticism and to be able to justify their teaching methodologies, I think they fail to do that mainly because they have not been taught something like post-med pedagogy in their teaching training programs. Because they said, I conducted a further study which formed the second part of this analysis, and I interviewed many teacher trainers from Fez, Meknes, and Rabat, and most of them said that we don't teach teacher trainees anything like post-med pedagogy. We teach them the methods separately, and it's up to them to maybe imply them or apply them the way they want. And even some advisors or teacher trainers even advise teachers to use the CLT, assuming that it's the best method, and that if they use another one, they will say it's an outdated one, and which is contradictory to the view of post-Methodism. So one of the implications is teacher trainers, advisors and supervisors must admit that there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Teacher advisors must concentrate less on what teachers should know and more on how they might think. And then they have to be more concerned with equipping the prospective teachers with the skills necessary to develop an enlightened eclecticism, and to be more flexible and to be able to justify their own methodologies when asked to. And finally, action research, which has been mentioned many times in this conference. And I think because if our students don't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. So how can we know about the way they learn is by conducting action research, which is according to Kibis. Today teachers are called upon to observe and analyze to finally understand and implement the changes in the light of the findings. Okay, so this is the end of the presentation.
Thank you so much. For your interesting presentation. Now I give the floor to our dear friend Mr. Mohammed Ashmara. His paper is entitled Investigating the Uncertainties that Affect Students Partaking in English Classroom Sessions, Faculty of the Humanities and Social Sciences, International Case Study. Mohammed Ashmara received a master's degree in Communication in Context from the University of Ismail in 2013. In 2015, he enrolled in a doctoral program at the University of Mohammed V in Rabat. Mr. Mohammed Ashmara has been teaching English as a part-time teacher in the Department of English at the Ismail University since December 2014. His current research interests include culture, media studies, communication, language, and identity construction. Mr. Mohammed, the floor is yours.
Well, this does not work first. Because that beginning, is it? Please go. Okay, thank you very much, Chairman, for giving us the opportunity to present my talk today. First of all, I'm very delighted to be among you all here, dear my professors, colleagues, and dear students. So as you can see, my talk today is about investigating. Of course, special thanks goes to the organizing committee for their valuable effort to make it a very successful international conference. So my presentation is about investigating the uncertainties that affect students partaking in English classroom sessions, faculty of letters and humanities, and make this as a case study. Well, some of you may ask the question, what do you mean by the uncertainties? The word uncertainties in the title is not randomly opted for, but since I'm conducting my study using a case study, my topic is a case study, which means that my findings would not be applicable, but in the explicit context, which is the Ismail University. So, as you can see, this is the outline, and I see that it's a little bit very long, and I don't know if I will be able to cover all these elements, but I see that the chairman is a little bit very nice person. He's going to provide us with some other 5 minutes. So, the introduction, statement of the problem, the aim of the study, significance of the study, research questions, literature review, methodology, data analysis, recommendations, implications, and references. So concerning the introduction, I think, and we all may agree, that in formal education, all the activities are taking place in the classroom, right? Which means that the classroom, or the context of the classroom, is a context where both teachers and students can share their knowledge. Unfortunately, some students, they don't take part in the classroom, and this is the end behind doing this study. So, I would like to start with this. Students are encouraged to actively participate in the classroom sessions, yet many of them are still reluctant to speak up. In this study, participation refers to all the actions that students produce in the classroom, which indicate their involvement in the class, which means that I'm talking about verbal and non-verbal interactions between both teachers and students. So, of course, we cannot deny the role or the pivotal role of classroom participation, because it may, for example, make students more motivated. It improves, of course, their communication skills. It also helps, students to learn better. The aim of the study is to unfold and cover some factors which affect student participation in classroom sessions. Why students keep silent all the time in the classroom, right? 5, 10 students are taking place or are participating mainly, but the others, they don't at all. So it tries to understand the basic beliefs or reasons behind student behavior, classroom participations. And of course, here I'm talking about student perceptions and student attitudes towards the classroom participation. Significance for the time constraint, I'm going to skip it. Research question: what are the common factors that affect student participation in these classroom sessions? So concerning the literature review, there are many interrelated, implicit or explicit factors that collectively or individually may contribute in shaping all the interactions in the classroom, be it personal, social, cultural. So there are many factors which come into play. And of course, according to GE 2008, classroom interaction cannot be isolated from the wider cultural context, which means we cannot, in the classroom is very dynamic. We cannot limit ourselves to only one classroom, but instead classroom as a context within us, which means many different classrooms, because we have students from different countries, from different backgrounds, etc. So concerning the methodology, from the title I opted for case study as a research method to closely examine the data of a specific context, which is my university. And of course, I opted for interpretative research paradigm and random, of course, to know more about student perspectives, student experiences, and random sampling method. Honestly, they were my students, 3 groups. These are my participants. So to make it like balance in terms of gender, we have 35 student male and 35 student female. The number of questions distributed is 70. And of course, the total responses, they get like 40 responses, which means I did not get the other papers. So, the data collection method, I used like 2 different data collection methods. I used the classroom observation. Of course, both teachers and students should be observed to know more about their feedback, their student, how do they interact, for example, while answering and asking questions. And of course, student responding to teachers' questions. Of course, the observation is taken like 7 weeks, and it was done, of course, to know the level of student participation, and at the same time to categorize students who are going to take part by giving them like structured interview questions. Structured directive interview questions, well, I can just explain it the same like it was like an assignment that I can give my student, and it contains like 7 or 8 questions that students are going to answer. So this is the structured interview questions that I give my student. As I said before, it was like an assignment. What sort of participation takes place in first-year English classroom sessions? In what ways does the classroom environment facilitate classroom participation? In what ways do teachers' behaviors affect classroom participation? What factors influence student classroom participation in these classes? Do you think it's important to participate in the class, and why? Does the atmosphere or the environment of the classroom promote student participation? What else could help you enjoy the lessons and participate in the class? So this is an assignment for students that I categorized. They don't take place in the classroom, and I give them the assignment to do it at home and submit their papers after. So, data from the observation. What I get from the observation is the following. It's 3 types of student and not 4. Full integration student, which means students who are taking part all the time in the classroom. They feel at ease to take part. They all the time raise their hands. They all the time answer questions. Even some venture to do presentations. And we have marginal interaction. Students just keep listening and taking notes. Then final type of student is quiet and avoid participation. They don't take part at all. So concerning when I give the assignment from the targeted student not taking part in the classroom, we have this, I scanned some of their extract. I don't know if I would be having time to go through all the extract, but I'm going to read some. So, too many students and noise make it difficult for me to concentrate. They don't want to wait for me to think of the answer. They don't. Maybe it refers to the teacher, it refers to classmate. And I stop and I keep quiet. Teachers focus on quality. Sometimes when the teacher gives the quality, so it's not the same, like different answers. So the teacher opts all the time for good qualities instead. Sometimes teacher could, for example, use negative gestures, which means what it means when it comes to non-verbal communication. And of course, I will make grammatical errors, and I feel that I'm slow when I speak. My pronunciation is wrong. I'm afraid that others cannot understand me. These are extract from student or from the participant. For example, it's difficult topic, so it means it has something to do with the content, and the listener will keep quiet. Sometimes people discourage participant or participation. So concerning how I treated my data, so data from student narratives would transcribe word for word, and data from the observation will also code it. I get patterns and themes which will identify throughout reading and rereading of the data. And after I get final categories or themes that should be talked about after. So, this is a chart. It contains like themes, subcategories, number of occurrences, and classification. I just need to explain something like variant, typical, and general. When you see that it's general, it means that the theme is very significant towards the participant. All the participants mentioned this theme. So among the themes we have negative teacher's trait. It can be manifested in some subcategories like no support, turning away from the person, and disapproving looks, like hard looks from the part of the teachers sometimes, but it should be accepted. They are teachers, so we should accept our teachers as they are. Negative classmate trait, of course, sometimes when you mispronounce or you give a bad answer, sometimes classmate could also laugh on at the student. Of course, we have others like student cultural values and norms. For example, some students, they don't feel comfortable, they disagree with others, mainly in topics which more related to religion, and sometimes previous bad experience. Sometimes if the teacher is trying to explain something, or for example, student get like embarrassing remarks, so the student is not going to be encouraged them to take part in the classroom. Student individual style and personalities in terms of anxiety, in terms of being overt or extrovert, and of course the fear of public speaking. So, as I have already mentioned, generally it means all the students come across to talk about the same thing. 40 students all mention this, and of course typical outcomes it would be like 50–80%, and variant outcomes it's some students mention some things. So these are the themes. So negative teacher's trait skills, of course, negative classmate trait, monotonous in difficult class content. Some students are not really interested in the content that teachers are giving sometimes. Student cultural values and norms. I even could venture and talk about identity here because students are moving from one context which is not theirs to a context of the university. And I could quote, Humibhab has notion of hybridity and the third space where students could construct their identities. And of course, previous bad and embarrassing experiences, student individual style and personality, the fear of public speaking, and insufficient language proficiency in terms of language, in terms of grammar, and the others. So concerning the implications, learning happens when learners are comfortable in their learning environment. Much of what happens in the class much of what happens in the class could be driven by both implicit and explicit in-related or interwoven factors such as beliefs of student traditions, culture, teachers, and student identities. This might raise some cultural issues, of course, and prevent students from participating in the classroom. Limitation of the study, while this study is, as its data suggests, it's a small-scale study looking at 3 groups or classrooms, and including a small sample of participants. The study was also limited geographically to Mulay Ismail University, and I would like to stress that this study, mainly specific findings, cannot be applicable somewhere else unless the context will be the same. General conclusion, this study confirms the importance of looking why teachers and students should take both. Many different factors which come into play. Among them, we have their social context, we have beliefs, culture, so which means that the classroom is not a fixed, the classroom is a context, it's a dynamic context which should only be taken into consideration because there are many factors which come into play. And this is my presentation, and I would like to trade my thanks to you all for your attendance, and thanks.
Thank you so much for making some time, and thank you as well for your very informative paper. So our next third speaker is Yusuf Aid Karoum. His paper is entitled The Use of Technological English in Some Engineering Schools. Yusuf Aid Karoum is a high school teacher of English He has been teaching English since 2003. He also gets an MA degree in General Literature and Comparative Criticism from University for School of Humanities. Currently, he's a PhD candidate in the Untitled University. Please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee for this insightful and well-organized conference. Also, I would like to thank the wonderful audience. Thank you for being here. I know that we are approaching the end of this this conference, so I will try to be as light as possible. Okay. I work with Professor Anas Khadija, okay, and by the way, she couldn't make it for some academic reasons. On her behalf, I'm going to present this, I'm going to give this presentation. Basically, me and Khadija, okay, Professor Khadija, we work in MSR, it's École Normale Supérieure de Rabat. So the title of my presentation is as follows. Okay, so the outline. We will tackle these following points: the definition, the key terms. By the way, I want to try to define. We have been defining the key terms, in this conference, and we are going to go over them. Professional requirements, teaching communicative skill. The case of NMSR, investigating NMSR students' feedback on teaching English, and then we will end up with the conclusion and basically some implications. So the points I will cover in this presentation, basically we are going to talk about the teaching of English, how students perceive how engineers, engineering students perceive the teaching of English, and we are going to see professional requirements with regard to the ESP teaching. And Mr. Rose yesterday talked that we don't have really ESP teaching in Morocco, so we do our best. And then we are going to examine the communicative language teaching techniques, and we'll try to end up with how students of engineering need a specific set of language skills, for their success in their future life and basically in the job market. Defining the ESP and the needs analysis. This is just what I basically want to share with you is that this idea of an approach. So there is a dichotomy, over the teaching of ESP. So do we really approach it? Do we really think it is an approach or methodology, or we are going to see this over the discussion? So we have Hutchinson and Waters, and Basketson and Robinson. So basically they agree on the fact that it is an approach. In line with the ESP, we have the needs analysis, and we have been defining needs analysis throughout this 2 days. So the know and the how and the what and the what. It was raised before by Mr. Rose about the 6 men. That's really we need the know, the how, the what of that we need to teach. The ESP for engineering students, and basically for any specific English. The ELT tree here, when we think of ESP, we cannot single out the ESP. We have to contextualize the ESP with regard to the ELT teaching here. And the ELT tree here gives us a broader an overview of the different types of Englishes that target students. When it comes to the professional requirements, I would like to share with you this code. Tell me what you need English for, and I will tell you English that you need. So basically this summarizes the idea of what students need for the ESP course. Of course, we have ways, we have techniques, we have ideas that teachers can follow, okay? And here I would like to share with you, okay, some of them, basically by Hardin Kay and Evan Tony, okay? So I highlighted just keywords. We have the learner-centeredness, we have the authentic materials, we have specific teaching, we have design, okay? So there is a kind of, okay, targeting the needs of the students, okay, and we have been talking about this, okay, in the previous, okay, presentation. Another component that we have to take into account is the course design, okay. So the course design here is very important, and the diagram here, okay, or the figure here shows us, okay, an ESP course and how the elements of the methodology, the syllabus, the needs analysis, okay, can be helpful, okay, for a teacher to conduct his lesson, his ESP lesson. So basically, we have Hutchinson and Waters, okay, suggest and three, okay, main types of course design, namely the language-centered, we have skills-centered, and we have learning-centered. So when it comes to the language-centered approach to course design, so we start basically from identifying learners' targets, select theoretical view of language, then we'll end up with establishing evaluation procedures, okay, to test acquisition of syllabus okay, items. Another okay, approach to course design is a skill center. Okay, you see here just keywords here: identify, design, select. So these are the keywords here. So the second here, identify, is another approach. Is about learner-centered, okay, approach to course design. Now we come to the core of the presentation with regard to the teaching of communicative skills of I mean in the case of NMSR, École Normale Supérieure de Mines de Rabat. Just to give you an overview of the course, the English curriculum, we have the first year, the second year, and the third year. So how is ESP there? Okay, so this is the question. In S1 for the first year we have general English, of course, namely the grammar one. We divide into grammar 1 and grammar 2. We have the reading, and of course the 2 hours per week. It's really, this is a kind of a hurdle, and how can we really go for ESP, and we have time constraints with regard to the teaching of an ESP syllabus. We have the second year, we have business English, grammar 2. Here we go to further into deepening the student knowledge about the grammar. And then we have the TOEIC, and then we are going to talk about this form of assessment, because I was wondering, I was asking myself, we have the ESP, teaching the ESP here, and but the input, and how about the output, how about the assessment, how are we going to assess the students, okay? So basically, be it engineering or any other domain. So this is an example of the challenge that faced the ESP program. So this is the first year timetable. So as you see here, we have different subjects, different modules, and when it comes to the English, we have just 2 hours in a week. So how can we go ESP in this situation? Another challenging factor is that with regard to NMSR, we have different streams. Okay, so how are you going to really go for ESP there? And if we have, for example, here we have génie informatique, we have énergie renouvelable, we have electromécanique, and we have different things. So how can you make it? Another point, the proportion of Moroccan engineers. So statistics, reality shows that engineers in Morocco, be it in INSAM or ENIM or whatever, they go to francophone countries. Okay, so when it comes to English, really you don't find. There's a predestination. Okay, they say, okay, when I get my diploma, I opt for France and so on. Now we have how did we go in this presentation? Sorry, in this research. We basically raised two main questions. Okay, how can the teaching of English in Moroccan engineering schools, NMSR or any other higher institutions, be improved to serve engineering students' needs? Another question, what are the language practices that Moroccan engineering students perceive as their needs for success in the workplace? Okay, the methodology the way that we adopted is mixed method approach. Okay. The data collection, we gathered about 120 students. Okay, that we covered the first year, the second year, and the third year. Okay. Now we go to the discussion, the findings that we would like, me and my professor, my supervisor, by the way, I am her, okay, she's my supervisor. So that we conducted, I just selected some questions that I want to share with you. And the question is about 20 questions, and just we selected some questions. So we have question 1, do you prefer to study text in engineering field? By the way, we have to double the time for me because...
No, you have 8 minutes each. So.
Yeah, okay. Okay, you know, most students out of 120, they opted for they say yes, of course they like it, they like this ESP, okay, text, especially with engineering. Another question, do you prefer business English or engineering English? The majority opted for the engineering English, okay, and this shows that we have, number one, students attach great importance to EE or engineering English. Another implication is that the engineering English can be helpful, okay, I mean, in terms of, okay, implication of it in the school curriculum. Another question with regard to PowerPoint presentation, okay, so what's the relation, what's the link between PowerPoint presentation, traditional courses and ESP? Of course, now imagine that I was giving this presentation just okay, reading from notes. Okay, I think there will be a difference. So most students opted for the PPT, the PowerPoint courses, and this is okay, proved by the Lowry, who said that PowerPoint presentation improves learning, invokes audience, okay, and also adds explanation of complex illustration and so on. So the use of ICT is important to really to transmit and send your message. TOEIC and TOEFL. So here, when we ask the students about TOEIC and TOEFL, of course, it is. I mean, it is in the name. When in the third year, students take the TOEIC test, okay. And of course, every generation, okay, every year we have the TOEFL, okay. I don't know if it is the same thing in other schools, okay. And the school that's paid for the students, by the way, okay. So they like the TOEFL, they like the TOEIC as it is. We tackle just two skills, the reading and the listening. So they opted for the TOEIC. But could we have other ways of assessing the ESP, okay, course apart from the standardized, okay, test? Another question is that do they know other tests? So for the ELS, okay, and of course we have the GRA, we have the GMAAT, we have other standardized tests. They say that the only few out of 120 they know this. Now when it comes to the grammar courses, so the teaching of English with regard to the grammar courses, of course students define grammar courses as boring, and statistics here show that about 40% they find boring, and so I will dwell much more on this. Now, how would you evaluate English courses in MSR? Okay, so basically students learn. Okay, in addition, I mean, even though during this, what shall I say? Although we have a kind of time constraints and the syllabus and so on, students managed, to learn something. Conclusions, okay, so I am rushing, okay. We come to the, I'm about to finish, by the way. So we come to the implications and conclusions. Teachers should have some qualifications, okay, and in Morocco, there's a big question. There is theory, but in terms of practice, do we have ESP teachers? So for example, this year it happened to me that I'm giving some classes as a part-time teacher in the Faculty of Letters and Human Sciences. And we made the placement test for master, for the master, program, and it happened to me that I have 4 masters in the same class. they are all pre-intermediates. I mean the A2 or so we classify them into intermediates, pre-intermediates, and so on. So these 4 masters we have the Islamic studies and civilization building. We have the governance. We have also the master of sociology and the master of also the diligence in family issues and discourse renewing. So 4 masters. I was really torn apart. So what course I'm going to offer them? So sociology, governance, and so on. So this was qualification. Okay, so the teachers have to deliver such lessons. So of course, strengthening learners' communicative competence. We have of course we have the teachers should go normally goal oriented. So just roughly, it will be squarely wrong to depend solely on technical competence. So we have to go kind of, I will try to coin the word global, okay? A kind of going global, GE, General English, and at the same time, ESP, which is local, okay? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, students, for your interesting paper as well. Okay, now I will, our last but definitely not least presenters are Mr. Tufik Al-Zraoui and Khalid Al-Khatib. They have both co-authored the paper entitled Developing to okay. So they co-authored the paper entitled Developing Transversal Skills in Teaching English for Engineering to INSAM students. Tufik Al-Zraoui is a professor of English and Media Studies at the Department of Communication, Languages and Sciences of Education, École Nationale Supérieure d'Enseignement Technique, ENSET, in Rabat. He, in addition to applied linguistics, his interests include communication and media studies. He is the author of many articles that have been published both nationally and internationally. The second speaker is Khalid Al-Khatib. He is a professor of English at INSAM Engineering School in Meknes. He has a doctorate degree in project-based learning. He has joined he joined INSAM in 2010, where he is currently teaching English for engineering, business English, and professional writing to engineering cycle students and general English to preparatory classes. Please, floor is yours.
Everybody, happy to speak to you today in this international conference. In fact, it is a paper that we prepared together with Professor Dur and Professor Zariouh. It was about developing communication skills in teaching English for engineering to INSAM students. This was a study that, of course, brought new findings concerning the approach followed in this engineering school. So basically, we are going to speak about items that revolve around, the following items. We'll start with introduction, then of course the conceptual framework, then review of literature, methodology, the study results and analysis, and finally implications of the study. So, conclusion by the end. So, this study specifically deals with INSAM engineering students who are studying English for engineering through project-based learning, PBL. It attempts to describe how project-based learning, or PBL, helps develop students' communication skills, namely critical thinking skills and interpersonal skills. This study, the conceptual framework, this study is conducted on two main communication skills, critical thinking skills and interpersonal skills. Normally, critical thinking skills is, of course, as a definition, the intellectually disciplined process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing yes, synthesizing and or, of course, evaluating information gathered from observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, or communication. This is, of course, the approach we follow with these students is implicit, not explicit, as I will explain later. Again, another definition, or maybe another conceptual framework for our study is that critical thinking education is the intellectually disciplined process of actively and skillfully, education has a positive effect on problem-solving skills and self-esteem of students. Of course, here, this is maybe what we lead our students to by the end. And finally, critical thinking skills can be mobilized by students as interdisciplinary life skills depending on their future needs, especially for integration in the job market or employability as a whole. Concerning interpersonal skills, there has been a consensus among applied linguists that possessing interpersonal skills refers to having a communicative competence that implies different sub-competencies, namely grammatical, sociolinguistic, discourse, etc. And of course this is quoted or taken from Delhines as a source and then ratified and maybe developed by Canal & Swain in 1980. Students, by the way, students, normally, the focus on interpersonal skills emanates from students' need to appropriately and effectively communicate in the potential different social settings in the job market. This is basically when they have their degree, the need to have access to the job market, at the same time to be easily within specific, let's say, context where they can use English freely and they develop maybe their skills by the end. And again here, students' interpersonal skills in this study are assessed to see if the project-based instruction in some students take helps them develop these interpersonal skills in their verbal and non-verbal communication. And we'll see later how this has maybe different results. Since communication skills, as a literature review, since communication skills are considered vital by academic society and the world of business, engineering graduates need an ever-increasing interest in these skills to keep up with the current ever-changing states of the global market. And we are maybe under pressure, in fact, because there is a shift, there is a change, in fact, in the job market. People will be required to have access to artificial intelligence competencies and skills. People will be able to, or will have to, deal with data, with maybe new requirements and challenges in the job market. Some jobs will be somehow even, let's say, deleted from maybe the perspective due to the changes, the fast changes in the job market. Again, coming back to interpersonal communication skills are considered as central assets for lifelong learning. Of course, through our experience as practitioners, engineering students, once they get their diploma and go to the job market, they completely change. And they just somehow change their view about their education, whether it is valid for the job market, and even about the development, the professional development they have by the end of their career. I mean, after 5 or 6 or 7 or even 10 years, how they become, in fact. Again, another aspect that I still have to come back to is, of course, in relation to critical thinking skills. In a globalized and hyper-connected society, research suggests that putting critical thinking skills and interpersonal skills at the center of interest in modern higher education, here one way, and updated research reveals that these communication skills are rewarding, of course, assets for learners who will have different profiles in different fields of interest and job markets, either locally or globally. The methodology we followed in this field study, of course, having opted primarily for a experimental design. 4 sections of engineering students have been randomly chosen to participate in the study. It uses the mixed methods, that is triangulation, which allowed us to have freedom of choice when selecting methods, techniques, and procedures of research. Both quantitative and qualitative data are used to investigate the research problem from different angles, just to maybe maximize and even improve the validity of our results. The instruments, of course, and the analytical procedures used in the study are as follows. Of course, 240 fourth-year students took part in the study. Of course, they participated in this they participated in the study during the second semester of the year of the 2017-2018 academic year. The participants are divided into 4 sections and study English for engineering through the project-based learning (PBL) method, which revolves around projects that promote authentic, collaborative, and autonomous learning. And we refer back again to the Candle learner, not the Jack learner. We'll talk about that later. To validate the effects of PBL through numerical evidence in critical thinking and interpersonal skills development, a quantitative methodology is used to improve reliability of scores gained from the instruments. And again, a survey is used was used in order to investigate the attitude of students toward the effect of using project-based learning on the communication skills under study. The administered survey took the form of a questionnaire containing 16 statements that are designed to investigate 2 major factors, namely critical thinking skills and interpersonal skills. By the end, the survey used for the purpose of the study will be subjected to a qualitative analysis, or was subjected, in fact, to a qualitative analysis to understand why students adopt a specific attitudinal statement towards developing communication skills. I will give the floor to my colleague to speak about the study and some results and findings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tofet. To move on, then, in this section, the results of the study are reported for the issues under investigation. Okay? So these results include both the quantitative and qualitative analysis of the collected data used for the purpose of the study, while the effect of project-based instruction on engineering students' development of critical thinking skills and interpersonal skills, of course. And here, the collected data has been encoded and categorized to produce numerical information. Okay. Well, here the objective is, of course, which we could generalize it to the target population, if you like. Then, okay, thank you. Statistically, therefore, it was possible to statistically, quantify, analyze, and summarize the collected information in such a way that this article will enable the readers to see what the data reveal about the target population. To investigate, of course, the role of project-based learning in improving our respondents' communication skills, of course, this is one of the major objectives, and determine the causal relationship that may exist between PBL on the one hand and these communication skills on the other. Okay, now we move on to the results and analysis. From the collected data, results reveal that PBL has an immediate impact, on communication skills. In fact, the majority of students agree that the learning process has positively developed their critical thinking and interpersonal skills. Okay, have a look at this. So here, in this graph that is entitled PBL's Impact on Engineering Students' Communication Skills, you can see side by side both factors for a more comfortable comparison, where you have for the first factor, okay, 1,114 positive answers among the 1,672 points of view. Then for the second factor, we have 1,164 positive responses. So to give it a more detailed, from a more detailed perspective, let's have a look at another pie chart here, where it is easily explained that we have 44, okay, and 23 that respectively agree and strongly agree with the F1 or the first factor, 8 statements. Okay. On the other hand, for the second, if we want to go into analyzing those findings, when it concerns the first statements 1, 2, and 3 that were concerning evaluating presentations and slide projections, of course, for this purpose, we give to students evaluation sheets that include 4 sections, namely the verbal characteristics of the presentation, the non-verbal aspects, the content, but also some major factors like enthusiasm, spontaneity, and stage fright management. Okay? So this leads us to conclude that it helps them to improve their verbal as well as non-verbal communication techniques and their slide design standards, because here we have given them the norms and standards to follow when they are designing their slides for formal purposes. And of course, when they are evaluating their mates, because here project-based learning assessment is not only exclusively teachers' assessment, but it's also peers' assessment and also self-assessment. Critical listening to presentations. Okay, this is statement 4 and 5, leads to or helps them to assimilate the message and improve their presentation skills. Okay, receiving feedback from classmates and teacher, which is also very important. We diversify the kind of feedback that students receive. Okay, this helps them, of course, to improve their presentation skills, whether verbal or non-verbal. And finally, writing the project report, which is the end, the outcome of the project's development, also leads to improve the group members' contribution, okay? Because it is a collaborative work, and the report is also part of a collaboration or part of collaborative teamwork. Then, this leads us to conclude that critical thinking skills are boosted with PBL, and this evaluation, critical listening, reception of feedback, and project report writing allow the students to achieve progress in their learning. To move on to the second factor, let's have a look at this pie chart where we can clearly see that 47% and 22% respectively agree and strongly agree with the 8 statements that the second factor include. To move on more rapidly, anyway, the delivering presentations here helps them, of course, improve their verbal as well as their non-verbal communication skills. Interacting with classmates, collaborating with team members, managing presentations delivery, because PBL in essence it's a communicative approach, it is student-centered approach where we give room to interaction in the classroom, okay? Helps them of course develop their organizational skills when it comes to project development as group members. Then interacting of course with classmates here, it helps them better interpersonal communication. Of course, this leads us to conclude that there is an urgent need here for interpersonal skills for engineering students, and the end product, which is the report, shows better communication techniques, interpersonal skills, organizational skills, and finally interpersonal communication. Okay, rapidly we'll go through the implications in 1 minute. Okay, we have communication skills are more beneficial advantages we have noticed with project-based learning. Then students achieve lateral thinking when they write their reports as a creative approach to their learning, because here PBL is a constructivist learning strategy. It pushes students to construct their learning, to boost their autonomy, which is a very important aspect of this learning strategy. And then finally, students are now engaged in an active form of learning that can positively affect their academic and professional lifelong efforts. Because here we are looking for the long-term, not just the short-term learning. Okay, well, we'll break off in a minute and then we'll take questions. Just time to conclude. To sum up, PBL was appreciated by NSAM students. Okay? Positive response to the two communication skills address critical thinking and interpersonal thinkings that the questionnaires generated. Of course, was very positive. Then learners show different levels of engagement, social interaction, contextualized learning, and cognitive processes throughout the different cycles of their project. And of course, I will give you, if you want, more details about the features of project developments, or either the pillars of project-based learning, if you want, after the presentation. They also had enough time to revisit their projects each moment, evaluate it and modify it to meet the specificities of the task and the audience. And here there is no room to elaborate about the communication, the IT. We're talking about the 21st century skills. Using platforms, social networks to collaborate, not necessarily being together, but we can use it for being at a distance and then collaborate and have a one common outcome. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, just one word. Okay, these findings can motivate more teachers to integrate project-based learning in their day-to-day practice, even though it's kind of restrict their control in the classroom, because here is more centered learner strategy. Teachers might need to expand the learning time range that starts in the class and extends to the library, home, other institutions, and digital tools beyond the class. And of course, this experience might require, of course, another study in other different learning environments to compare the usefulness and effectiveness of teaching through projects. Okay, that brings me to the end of my presentation. Okay. Thank you very much.
For your insightful presentation. I'm sure I know I could always be tough, but time constraint. So now I think after this stimulating presentation, I think the audience would like to ask some questions or comments on some point made by the speaker. So I'll open the list. I'll give you numbers, so I'll just save some time, right? Number 1, number 2, number 3, 4, 5, 6.
Leave it to students first. Students first.
Student first. I'll set from the very beginning. Thank you so much for reminding. So I will. So wait. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Right. Thank you. So number 1, Suhail. So sorry, but we have to stick to the traditions that brought the Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor. My question is directed to the professor next to you. Mr. Ashmar. Well, I think that there is something that is putting your methodology under real jeopardy. You've opted for quasi-experimental design. Is that right, sir? That's where I'm seeing that. So it's you, sir. So you've opted for a quasi-experimental design.
Yes.
And you said that you've also opted for a mixed methods approach. Right, sir? So I'm afraid to say that you have no option to choose a quasi-experimental design while adhering to a mixed methods approach. Among mixed methods approach, there are designs like embedded designs, nested designs, but you cannot opt for quasi-experimental design while conducting a mixed methods research. Thank you.
Okay. My two questions are addressed to the last speakers, Dr. Khalid and Dr. Tawfiq. Would you please share with us some of the project-based learning techniques? And concerning your study, which type of project-based or project, which type of project you have adopted in your study? Is it individual project or a collective project? In case a collective project, what are the drawbacks that you have found, and what have you done to avoid these? Thank you.
My question is for Mr. Don't you think that we should formulate our teaching methodologies based on learners' language learning strategies for using only one or two methodologies during lecture would be an exclusion for students who have different preferences? Don't you think that we should focus more on learners' learning strategies more than teaching methodologies, to base teaching methodologies again? Is that clear? Thank you.
Sure.
My questions are to the last presenters. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm confused a little bit about certain points. You say that critical thinking is a communicative skill. I don't see the point. I'm still confused about what do you mean exactly by project-based learning. Is it a method? Is it a technique? What is it exactly? You could have avoided this by providing us with operational definitions of the terms. Concerning the nature of the study, you say that it's a quasi-experimental, but what are the variables? What is the treatment? If you consider project-based learning as a treatment, then you need maybe critical thinking tests to test the effectiveness of the independence variable of the dependence one. I doubt the idea that you have random selection because you have worked with intact groups. For already established groups, engineering students, I think. And thank you very much.
Okay, Cesare.
Okay, thank you for your presentations. I think this is a remark for Mr. Ashmar. I think you claimed that you opted for random sampling. I think it's intact group, as Citizen said, or convenience sampling, not random sampling, because you use your students. My second question is or comment is to Mr. Yusuf Karou. So while listening to you, you asked questions. You said, how can we make it as an ESP practitioners when you have different disciplines in the school that you talked about? And another question, you asked a question about testing. Me as a listener, I was expecting to have an answer at the end of your presentation, but there was no answer. It's like it's telling us, well, it's impossible to do it. I think you as a researcher, you should provide an answer, because that's what we should normally expect from you to do. And there are answers. For example, I can agree with you if you are the only teacher at that school, well, it's impossible because it's too much work. But I'm sure that there are other teachers in that school, and you will be responsible about teaching just some disciplines. And you can conduct needs analysis, you can develop or design a course to meet the students' needs. And for testing, I think that it's not necessary to use the TOEIC and the TOEFL, because normally we test what we have taught. You take the skills and the content you have taught, not necessarily to go for TOEIC and TOEFL. Thank you.
Thank you, Cesare. See it from the seat.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to briefly make a comment question at the same time to Mohammed Ashraf. Okay, I liked your presentation. It was very informative and very clear. I'd just like to, this time, perhaps to put the system of assessments under the limelight. I think that today's students are clever and smart at the same time. I think once they realize that their classroom participation is taken into consideration in the overall assessment of the course, I think they will participate actively and so massively. I'm not sure this category of students may be eloquent, competent speakers, but do refrain and are so reluctant because they do not feel the utility of doing so, because after all, their participation will not be taken into consideration. I think this is something that perhaps should be taken into. Thank you.
Okay, now I think I will give the floor to our panelists. So, go on.
Okay, so I'm going to answer the question of your name, please. Mohammed, yes. So your question was about using the learning strategies of the students, and then this will help us maybe construct our own methodologies of teaching. So actually, I will go back to what I mentioned in my presentation concerning the post-method pedagogy, which is it's not a method per se, but it's an alternative to the term method. So we should not be thinking in the frame of developing a method. So, but it's an alternative to methods, the term. Okay, so post-method is like it encourages the student, the teacher's autonomy and potential to construct his own methodology based on his experience, based on the action research, maybe the findings that he comes up with based on a research that he makes maybe in his classroom. So I'm going to quote Brown 2002, who once said that the main wrong thing with the world of education today is that there is one group who do it, okay, so which is the teachers, and there is another group who think they know about it, and which is the researchers who have never maybe taught before, and this second group tell the teachers what they should do, which is totally reversal, as you can see. So maybe teachers must maybe theorize what they practice and practice what they theorize. So I hope this answers your question.
Okay, see you, Shmar.
Well, thank you very much, C. Zahri and C. Hamdati, for your insightful remarks. Of course, it's inconvenient, something rather than random sampling. Mainly after the process of doing observations, right? The process of doing observations is to just identify student uniques. Okay, student, not all the student, because in my presentation I mentioned like 3 different types of student. Those students who are really taking part in the classroom, and those students who keep just taking notes, and those who don't participate at all, they keep silent. Okay? So, this is the targeted population that I'm talking about. Those students who do not take part at all. Okay? This is what I mean. And I really appreciate your remark concerning self-industry. Yes, I do agree. What we need is more within the assessment. But, you know, how can you, for example, do kind of assessment to a very huge number of students in the classroom? No, I don't think when it comes to the assessment, yeah. But how? Again, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sir Shmar. See, Yusuf?
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Zahri, for your pertinent and
targeted remarks. Okay, yes, you're right. When it comes to how can an ESP practitioner deal with the teaching different streams. Okay, so I will just give you my modest experience with my students. So when I first entered the class, okay, I found myself in a crossroad. So I said to myself, why can't we have this mutual work between me and the students? So and this it brings us to a question, to a point raised earlier, okay, yesterday. Can we engage students into the ESP, okay, process and teaching? So I assigned some presentations, okay, because they are forced to study together, the governance, the sociology, and Islamic studies, and diligence in family issues. So, and we were exchanging ideas, but with a purpose. Of course, we as teachers, okay, that were running the program, we agreed on a glossary. So each program will finish with a kind of glossary, a repertoire, or vocabulary that will help them. Okay, because basically this is what the medium, the currency they are using, okay, in their field. So and of course, from my part, I try to say, okay, well, I told them, you are a sociology, you're studying master in sociology, so and I will try to bring some text in relation to sociology. But another, next to this student, there is one who studied Islamic education. So they were forced to, okay, to kind of, because they have only 1-2 hours per week, and this is the only time that they have. So if I had the possibility to make different classes for them, then I would go for it. And of course, we can raise questions. Okay, in these conferences, we try to find questions to this. Okay, and thank you for it. With regard to testing in NIM, okay, I don't know in other schools, in MSR, in NCS, or in some, okay, in NIM, they prepare students for a TOEIC test. Okay, so the TOEIC, this is how it goes. But do we have internationally, and this is a question, do we have really standardized tests that really test, for example, English for economics, English for the medicines, for the industry? Do we have, standardized tests internationally, I'm speaking, that test only English for engineering? Of course, engineering, we have hydraulic, we have different streams, okay? Do we have tests that are standardized, that test, okay, that target computing, for example? We don't have. So, but basically, we try to design, okay, a kind of test that really suits it. So we try to do this. So okay, and this is, okay. I hope that I answered your question. Okay.
Thank you, Yusuf. Now I give the floor to Dr. Zarawi and Dr.
Yes. Thank you very much for your questions, and of course we appreciate your interest in our presentation and of course the content we deliver. Basically, project-based learning is an experience conducted with some students, and this is just the purpose behind writing such a paper and even carrying out this field research is just to discover the feedback from students and to see to what extent this maybe experience is successful and whether it can be implemented elsewhere. And in fact, I myself implemented in my original school, of course, ENSET, École Normale Supérieure de l'Enseignement Technique in Rabat, and it is of course an engineering school, not a school of maybe technical teachers who specialize in technical education. This experience, of course, is exactly positive. I wouldn't say it's totally effective, but it's positive. Basically, we try to have some feedback from students and share it with you. And for the idea of whether critical thinking, whether it is not a communication skill, I would say critical thinking is not given for its sake. I mean, it's not given 100% as a course. I mean, we include it in activities given with different content. Basically, students are trained to become independent, to think, to to use maybe different techniques of evaluating content, processing content, and even taking the initiative in their learning. So the idea is that the outcome is positive with these students, and we want just to track that, right? And basically, it's only one component. Students learn maybe other skills or acquire other skills, working together, maybe collaborating, cooperating, taking the initiative, taking somehow responsibility for their learning and stuff. Basically, project-based learning is both individual and collective. Individual meaning that students, let's say collective, it means that they write their presentations, or they write and prepare their presentations and deliver them in class in groups of 5 or 4 students, and by the end they write reports about their presentations. This is individual. I mean, they reflect, they think about their experience as presenters and as content maybe transmitters, and at the same time they develop their writing skill, their communication skill, and even their independence in learning. Why we chose only in some students? We could have maybe chosen other students from other contexts and maybe compare and contrast this approach with other approaches, but the scope was not exactly appropriate. We wanted just to reflect and to think about our experience, and then maybe it's open for maybe other maybe let's say studies. Another thing that I would like just to mention again, whether we thought of independent or dependent variables, this maybe can lead us to let's say a kind of research which is somehow extended, developed more with let's say different approach. I will just let my colleague to speak about other aspects of the question.
Sorry, sir, but I'm afraid that my question has...
Yeah, you will have your answer. Just be patient, be patient. I just would like to give him, to let him speak for, I'll come back to your question if you want, no harm. Yeah.
Okay, just to answer your question about project-based learning techniques, types of projects, whether it's a method or not, and to complement what has been said, project-based learning is a method, and it is mainly social constructivist in nature, communicative in nature, okay? But it has 3 major pillars that it relies on. First, okay, you have the course content should be, let's say, related to the daily life of students, and this is what you call real life, real content, and that's why here the choice was English for engineering, because this is the daily life of students and they feel more motivated to learn about it. This is what we call authentic learning. Okay, this is the first side. Then the second side is that it should be collaborative. Okay, in collaborations happen inside the classroom and outside the classroom as part of the project development, as I would say just for that. And this collaboration, okay, why is it social constructive? Because it pushes students, okay, to go beyond the zone of proximal development. They help each other to, okay, help each other to go beyond the limits that each student has, okay. This is the result of collaboration. And finally, okay, it is an autonomous learning strategy. It pushes students to become autonomous learners, while constructing their own knowledge from the beginning. We teach them, just scaffold them on how to deal with projects, and then we let them do the rest by themselves. And here we have the projects that are done throughout several steps, starting from doing research on the project, collecting data, organizing, selecting, and at the end result is the presentation that is delivered in the classroom, which shows the fruit of the project and that they need to share with the classmates, and then of course the end project report that comes as a global conclusion to the whole work, to conclude the portfolio. Anyway, here working the projects, as you said, these are group projects. Mainly it's done by 4 students. Every 4 students have to develop their projects and then come to the classroom and deliver the outcome. they need to show that they have mastered most of the, not only the language, but also they need to master the techniques of delivery, as well verbal as well as non-verbal. Okay? Yes?
Just a feedback to your answer. How do you guarantee that they have worked together?
Okay.
Because I have read some articles about collaboration,
Okay.
and it is stated that some of the drawbacks of working together is that they pretend that they work together, but it's simply one who did
Okay,
the job.
so one of the roles of the teacher is to detect that when they are delivering presentations. At the moment of delivering presentations, because for the teacher this is the outcome. We know exactly while they are delivering who has participated effectively in the development of the projects or not. Okay, showing that they know what they are talking about, know how to answer questions, know how to discuss, implicitly state that they have participated in the learning process, but you have no guarantee, because we can help them use some either social networks or platforms, but still, we need to work a little bit more on that, and maybe open platforms where they can register, where they can hand in their works, and we can then track whether they were effectively really participating in the group work or not. It's all the time a kind of very complicated issue to deal with. But what we can do as teachers is that at the moment of delivery we can have more or less an idea about who was participating effectively in the success of the project.
Can you just say something about what Wahid?
Yes,
we can.
So let me just come back to the idea I explained earlier. Normally, triangulation or mixed methods here is a way to have freedom of choice. I mean, freedom of choice in terms of selecting maybe the research techniques, the methods, and even the population. It is a random well, let's say convenience. I mean, because we just took our students as the target population, and of course this is just a way to somehow to achieve specific purpose. You have a purpose in mind. You would like just to achieve it through a specific maybe choice, and you explain it. You just take a decision. And of course, you know what you are doing. Of course, you have it clear in your mind, right? Basically, the idea is just the scope of the paper itself is not broad enough. For example, for a study that can maybe take students from different contexts, as I would say. For example, normally we could have taken students from other cities, from other engineering schools that follow the same procedure or the same course. Thank you.
Okay, there is another question here. One minute, Mr. Professor. There is just 1 minute.
Yes, I have just one remark to Mr. Wahid concerning triangulation. Well, what I think it's the fact of using 3 instruments in your research. Okay, so you use 3 instruments in order to raise the validity of your results. And another thing about quasi-experimental study, the main difference between quasi-experimental and general quantitative research using questionnaires and so on, is that there is a use of parametric statistics or parametric tests. So there are tests, a pre-test and a post-test, and there is a p-value. So, and this p is the parameter. Okay. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Anyway, now that we have come to the end of this conference, so on your behalf, I would like to thank our panelists for the stimulating, insightful, and informative talks. Wahib, I'm so sorry. I think you can have time for me once we finish the conference. Great. And on behalf of our presenters, I would like to thank the dear audience for the active participation. Now I will ask Professor Darouz and Professor Krouad and all of the organizing committee to join me here so that to give or to officially close the conference. Thank you all.
Aisha. Sbahi. this is meant to close the conference and to close the session. So I would like, on behalf of the organizing committee and the two directors of the two research group, jointly organized the conference. I'd like to thank every single speaker, professor, colleague, friend, organizing committee, composed of students in the master program, from the bottom of my heart for the wonderful job, you know, and the effort they have invested into bringing all, you know, this entire conference into success. And I think, and I would like to thank especially the, you know, speakers coming all the way from different cities, remote areas, from Casablanca, and even from Mujda, and Malawi as well, you know, students from Malawi. We were expecting, in fact, two distinguished scholars, one from, you know, Belfast, but he cannot make it, as last minute he changed his, not his mind, but he changed his schedule, and then he's concerned also in writing academics. It's the first time ever we've heard about this sort of, you know, like discipline is involved. And another person, as I told you, is one of my, I want to say, ex-teachers in Essex University, who introduced me to ESP for the first time back to 1995. It's a long time ago, yeah. Anyway, so I'd like to officially thank everybody, and I hope I didn't forget, you know, one single person, and I hope to see you in the not too distant future, and I hope, and we'll take, you know, recommendations, you know, and by the way, the papers delivered will be published in the proceeding. We'll do our best, you know. So please, I'm asking you, you know, to send us your papers as soon as possible. As soon as we get the papers, we'll publish them automatically. So if we reach like up to 10 papers, although there are like 30, more than 30 papers, presentations, but if ever we receive like 10 to 12, we'll launch, you know, the publication process. Okay. So, what can I say again? And I hope, you know, implications, recommendations, you know, highlighted by the speakers will be taken into consideration. As I said, the key issue, this needs analysis is a key issue, key factor in syllabus design, in the teaching topic. I would call it also as speed coder, call it the total teaching operation. And I hope to see you, you know, as I said again, in another event. And by the way, for PhD and the master student, we're organizing another study day next week on the 30th of April. It's going to be about the role of statistics. So if you are interested in joining, you know, and we have invited some distinguished scholars, you know, to give presentations, including presentation that will be delivered by some of the PhD candidates. I will morning, the whole day, from 9 up to 2 perhaps. We'll have one in a row. I mean, teachers, specialists, I would say specialists in statistics. These people who are invited are people, I would say, distinguished scholars in Morocco, so who are specialists in statistics. So they will come in here and they will talk about the role of statistics and with evidence, especially in relation to applied linguistics research methodology. Okay. Then we'll have another for master student. there will be a workshop with the on Friday, not on the 2nd, but on the 3rd of May. It's about the how to write a review of the literature, what to incorporate, what not to incorporate, what to avoid, what not to avoid. And I told you this is the key word in applied linguistics, I think. Yeah. Some of the distinguished scholars could not make it is because of the change we had in the change in the schedule. So at first we, as it was posted, the conference was on the 16th and 17th, but because the conference coincided with the Salon d'Agriculture in Meknes, then we had no choice but to move it to this week. As you say. I'd like to give the floor to some of my colleagues here and friends, if they ever want to say a word about this.
Photo of the conference.
You will do it after immediately.
I should thank wholeheartedly the organizers of this great event. I say great event, rare, scarce, and it's getting to scarcity. We need its multiplication, its reiteration, and we need its linking it to others, to spread it nationwide, not only, it should not remain in Meknes. But I've always been happy to be here, because I've started something informally. I don't believe in informal things. I'm very glad to have managed to establish such a link with someone called Larousse and the group. The tradition was Abou's group, someone who is involved in master studies, to take his students to Meknes for this, and this happened. This year, this time, I'm awfully sorry for that, because I was not in, and I had, hard times to organize this, and you know what it is, because I take care of the bus and everything to take the students here. But this would lead me to say a nice word to those faces, lovely faces. That's for you, that we are still alive. For you.
Thank you.
And for the Hervé Renard team, very patient, and patience we need. Before me, if Mr. Chair would allow me this, I have the remaining of the time management I have 2, 4, 15, 14, 17 minutes to speak, because this is the remaining time. I should congratulate ourselves, I would say. Yeah. Because all of us, students, teachers, all of us, we should congratulate ourselves on this very fruitful, productive, insightful, but it should be repetitive. We should, And I'm inviting you to come to us, to Kenitra, on the 3rd of May. We have got similar thing, It's about higher education and scientific research, what scope, that would question again. Come, welcome, most welcome to us. And the other thing I would like to say is about all those who have contributed to the success of this meeting. I believe in one thing. Today, maybe we started before, but today we have started. And that's good, it's a start. And if we stay together, maybe we'll make progress. But the other condition is to work together to lead to success. I'm telling all those who have contributed to, the members, I'm taking their details, And I would be, you know, I should have a record, a WhatsApp, بلا ما ندخلوا في ذاك، أنا أصدرك في ذاك الشيء. WhatsApp, a group in WhatsApp. Mr. X was in that, yeah, he's in on ESP, he's on, fine. Just send a word and it would circulate among them and we will lead to success. Thank you, Mr. Larouche, thank you, the whole group. Glad to be with you and I wish you the best in this career. Sorry if I reacted a moment ago, if I reacted to that student or to that doctoral student. It's not vehement, it's not to do any harm, simply to rectify him to the right track. We are in research in academia, and academia has some ethics. I'm sorry for that.
Well, 2 hectic days, but very fruitful. I have a special word to express warm thanks, especially because the old are already involved, including you. I have a word of special thanks to undergraduate students. This is something that shows that we are doing a good job and that continuity is really ensured. Good luck.
Actually, I have nothing to say except that I would like to thank you all for making this conference a successful event. Another thing, I just want to inform you that in addition to the workshop Professor Munoz is giving here at the faculty, about review of literature, Dr. Lilis is also giving a workshop on how to write an abstract. All right, so I give the floor to Professor Kerwad or...
Since
this is a tradition, it's a tradition.
More or less racing to give announcements like this, beautiful announcements and good pieces of news for our graduate students, for our master students, I would like, on behalf of Kirwad, to announce to our master students that we are also going to have a joint workshop on different themes of research methodology, specifically on how to develop research questions and hypotheses. What else? Designing, yes, instruments, questionnaires, etc. Yes.
Is it scheduled? Not yet.
Please, abstract. How to write an abstract?
Yes, I think he said it. Yes. So this is another one, another event. Okay. More details about the event?
Who is interested in the event?
Well, one word, one last word. It's I think through the impressions that we have, this conference has been a success. And if it has been so, it's because of the participants, because of the quality of the papers, presentations, and also because of the participation, as Mr. Khaloufi has just mentioned, the participation of the students and their pertinent questions that show they are really interested in what they're doing, and they show also the quality of what they're studying and how they are in fact internalizing all what they're doing. And also I would like to thank the organizing committee, the master students, doctorate students, all the teachers. Concerning the event, we are also, since we are this year kind of very willing, in fact, to do something for this institution. Instead of giving workshops as such, we also are going to organize a study day for master's students second year. They're in fact in the 4th semester, not attending any courses. They're they're doing their master thesis, and we don't want to leave them as such by themselves, struggling with how to put things into paper. So we thought of having teachers giving different either workshops or presentations on, for example, there is going to give, as he said, on how to write a research paper. Mr. Fatmi is going to give also a workshop on how to, in fact, formulate research questions and formulate hypotheses, which is not an easy thing to do. Students struggle with those things. Professor Yeshulti might give just how the formatting of a thesis, because we would like to come up with a common formatting. We sometimes feel that, as maybe Mary said, everyone is doing something that is different from etc. As a last word, I would like... But
there is no last word.
There is no, would like to thank...
But there is no last word.
The
first word to start.
Okay. Allow me, Mr. Chairman. One of these speakers is telling me. I just want to say one or two words.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Yes. No, just because I have a good pitch. I think I'm going to be heard by everybody.
Your ICT in here?
Yes, it's good. Well, allow me first of all to thank you all for the wonderful job you've done here in Meknes, because this is my I would say, not the hope, it's the place where I've started my career as a student in the English department.
Say one word.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And the second thing, yes, you will say one word, you are pressing me. So it's, I think we attended a lot of conferences, and I was really surprised by the wonderful presence and the participation of the students.
Yeah.
This is a good sign and a positive sign that this conference is completely a success. And for this, I commend you all for the wonderful job you've done, and thank you very much.
You should pay me a fine I paid this morning. 400 درهم خلص الجدارة. سو قريتك ولدي ودابا كتقيد لي بصح قيد باش نجي على الباروز مع 400 درهم وانا ما خارجين سد الباب.
So if you allow me, I'd like to invite, please, I'd like to invite the audience for group picture here. Yeah.
Please, students, come on behind your teachers. Cheese.
Cheese.